everyone, and welcome to Gladney University, presented by the Gladney Center for Adoption. We are so excited to have you here with us today. My name is Ashley Ellington, and I am the Education and Outreach Specialist here at Gladney. Just a few housekeeping things before we get started. After the training, you will receive a survey that pops up. You will need to complete this if you're needing CEUs or a certificate of completion. Don't worry, if you miss the link, you will receive an email tomorrow with the same information where you can fill it out there. Your CEUs and certificates of completion will take about 5 to 7 business days to get to you. And just a couple of things to get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, I'll be monitoring the chat. So just please be sure to put them in there and I'll make sure that Todd answers them for you. With that being said, we are thrilled to have the wonderful Todd Treat here to present to you all today. He's amazing, and I just know you're going to love learning so much from him on his positive psychology in teens presentation today. So without further ado, Todd, I'm going to let you take it over from here.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, again, glad to be here this afternoon. It's a pretty amazing group of people who are on this training, so I appreciate you all coming and being a part of this kind of talk and kind of give you a little bit of background on myself. Again, my name is Todd Treat. I've spent the last probably 22 years working with teenagers in different capacities. I have worked through the church realm. I'm also a licensed counselor and worked with families in that way. Currently, I serve as the Director of Youth Clinical Services at MHMAR of Tarrant County and kind of oversee all the psychiatric and therapeutic services here. And then I'm also a Gladney adoptive parent, and I have 3 teenagers of my own. And I think those teenagers are the hardest ones ever because they're mine. It's so much easier, it seems like, to work with teens that aren't yours because you don't have to go home with them as much. All those experiences kind of helped me kind of think through how to work with teens. And today I'm going to kind of go through some positive psychology stuff with teens. But please know this is not exhaustive. You all know a lot as well. But the whole goal of this for me is to kind of explain the basic concept of positive psychology and then to give a lot of activities that you can utilize. Many of them are pretty basic, but they can have profound effects on our relationship with teens and how we work with them. So again, this is called Positive Psychology for Teens. If you have questions, feel free to ask, and I'll do my best to make up answers or give you good answers, one of the two. But again, glad you're here. So if we think about this past year, this is what it kind of felt like to me as far as a good representation of it. We never experienced anything like this. Been incredibly stressful, incredibly difficult, and that was for the adults. So we can only imagine how the teens felt. I know that my son, one of my sons, was a junior in high school when the pandemic started and just graduated this summer. And just navigating this whole experience for a senior year was tricky. It was hard. It kind of just felt like this nonstop, or maybe it felt like this, like a dumpster fire in the middle of the river. The challenges of just trying to deal with things that we've never dealt with. And when we look back at this past year, the challenges that our teens had to deal with is unprecedented. There's no real playbook on how to do these things. There's no real playbook on how to come through it. And because of this, we saw some major themes kind of come out for our teens. We saw issues with isolation. 3 in 4 youth reported feeling isolated from one poll study that was done. Obviously, this is true. We went from a normal lifestyle to being kind of shut-ins in the matter of hours, it felt like. I can still remember being on spring break, and all of a sudden the college basketball tournament started shutting down, and it felt like life shut down because in 24 hours, schools were saying spring break was extended. And from that point forward, it just wasn't quite the same. And our kids almost overnight got stuck at home with families, some of those teens in situations that weren't very healthy to begin with. And even if it was a healthy situation, families being in that close proximity for that long with no escape can cause its own set of challenges. So I'm sure a lot of you all experienced a lot of those things as well with yourself and with your families. We also saw this huge hike in social media. Social media was already a big thing before, but over the course of the pandemic, they found that social media use went up 61%. And with this increased use, we found already that studies have shown that social media can lead to higher levels of anxiety and depression among teens. And if you think about this, kind of logical. Even though we're connected, we're not really connected. A lot of the platforms nowadays are all about seeking kind of likes, seeking acceptance. A lot of times you're seeing the best case scenario for people online. Kids are posting their dream days, their best things, what they own. And for a lot of teens, that's hard because you're comparing yourself to kind of a fake reality, which is causing you to feel out of sorts. So we have this situation of just unhappy teens. In April, Pew Research did a study and found 50% of parents said their child's mental health had decreased over the past year. And again, it's obvious for what we've all had to deal with. Again, same kind of story. Depression. A Harvard youth poll found in May that 51% of teens feel more down, depressed, and hopeless. I don't know about you all who work in the school systems or juvenile justice or even just in normal therapy settings. But over here at MHMR Tarrant, we've seen an increase in kids coming in with anxiety and depression symptoms, just from having to deal with this, from having to navigate it, not knowing how to cope with it. You know, we as adults didn't know how to cope with it, so it's very hard for us to tell our kids how to cope with it. So very challenging. So we have all these things going on for our teens right now, and it leads to this challenging environment of them struggling. And what do we do about it? How do we help them? And how do we help them see things maybe from a different lens, maybe to reframe what's going on? So we get into this kind of thinking of this whole word of happiness. And happiness is a unique, challenging word. So what I want you to do, if in the chat, you want to put, how would you define happiness? So let's kind of put some of your definitions, trying to. Can't see any of those. If there's anybody posted, Ashley, I can't see the chat box. So are there any definitions being posted?
Yes, we have peace of mind, comfortable with yourself, balance of life, very good feeling, contentment, the feeling of joy in everyday life. Happiness is when you make experiences that make you feel good. The feeling you get when something good happens.
Yeah, those
a state of calmness and feeling and content.
And I can see hearing your children laugh and for feelings. So those are all great, good definitions. Well, a psychologist by the name of Ed Diener, kind of one of the big people in positive psychology, he wrote a book called Happiness, Unlocking the Mysteries of Psychological Wealth. And he kind of calls happiness subjective well-being. He says it's a combination of life satisfaction and having more positive emotions than negative emotions. And so when we think about this idea of happiness, it really is just having this overall sense of more positivity than possibly this negative side of things as far as how we feel. Now, the challenge with this is kind of subjective. So we have to kind of work to figure out what exactly that means for our kids and for us. But again, trying to put that definition on, if we can help define it as far as a concrete definition, that might help our kids and ourselves try and figure out how to find it or how to get it. So why do we study this thing called happiness? Well, in 1998, so about 20 years now or so ago, a guy by the name of Martin Seligman was the president of the American Psychological Association. And while president, he was trying to figure out what his big goal would be to kind of help lead what was going on in the culture of psychology. As he looked around at psychology, he noticed that we spent a lot of time talking about pathology, symptomology, and mental illness. And it kind of became his view that all we did basically was sit around and try to analyze what was wrong with you. So all of our questions were designed to figure out what issues you had, what challenges you had, how your life wasn't good, what those negatives were, so that we could then diagnose you, so that we could then fix you, was kind of the theory. And his mindset was there's got to be more to it than just that. And so he figured maybe we should also look at what's right with you, what's good about you. And this led to this whole new thing of positive psychology, is what he called it, in order to try and figure out how do we help people see what is good about themselves, see their strengths, and use those strengths and that good part of life to help them have a meaningful life. From there, it kind of exploded a little bit with different people kind of taking different parts of that. And a lot of people got excited about this whole thinking because it really was a whole different way of looking at stuff, and it led to more enjoyment in dealing with people and trying to help them and trying to figure out stuff, because no longer were you stuck on that kind of negative side of it. You also had this positive aspect that you could focus on, which was fulfilling to a lot of people. And as we did this, we also kind of figured out how powerful that human mind is, which all of you know this because all of you have gone through either different experiences, different studies, that you know how amazing our brain is. But it's just amazing how we can control how our brain functions in a lot of ways. And sometimes our brain is so good that we can't even stop it from doing things. So I want you to try and do something for me. For the next 30 seconds, I want you to do whatever you can to not think about a pink elephant. So don't let a pink elephant come into your mind. Don't even think about it. Don't let pink elephants ever enter there. Don't even come up with a picture of it. Don't do anything to think of a pink elephant. All right? So we're not thinking of pink elephants. So everybody good? Nobody think of pink elephants? No, of course not. All of us immediately thought of a pink elephant because our brain automatically kind of took that and kind of ran with it as far as thinking that through. And so again, our brain is such a powerful mechanism that kind of helps function with or without our consciousness sometimes. But the good news is we can also kind of start to control some of this. And so as they were kind of thinking about this positive psychology and the power of the mind, they started to learn just how much this could affect not only you daily, but also long-term health benefits, long-term just lifestyle and life satisfaction. And so one of the studies that happened was by a person named Snowden. It's a pretty interesting study. It's called the Nun Study. Maybe some of you have heard of it. But basically what Snowden did was he went back quite a few years to start studying nuns. And when you become a nun, you apparently have to write down kind of a personal statement of taking your vows. It's like your vow statement, and you just write out why you're doing your vows and why it's important to you. And most of these females are age 22 when they did this. And they wrote their vows out. And then what Snowden did was he just started to follow these people. So it's a pretty long study. And he did it because he was trying to figure out if the types of words you used, how optimistic you were, made an impact on you at all. And so what they did is they took all these statements and they divided them up into kind of 4 categories based on the word choices they used. If they used a bunch of optimistic, hopeful, energy type words, they were put in the highest quadrant. And if they used a lot of more kind of more service, more negative, more kind of black and white kind of words, more words that just didn't have any feeling behind them, then they were put in this lower quadrant of optimism. And when they kind of divide this up as far as how cheerful people were based on these 4 quadrants, they found some amazing results. What they found is that over this long study, at age 85, 90% of the most cheerful quartile were still alive. 34% of the least cheerful quartile were alive at that same age. At age 94, 54% of the most cheerful still alive, 11% of the least cheerful were alive. Now, is this a causation? Not necessarily, but it is interesting to think that people that were extremely positive in their vow statements live longer. So the more positive we are, possibly could affect kind of how long we can live or just our health benefits in general. So what are the reasons for this? Again, does optimism make a difference? They're finding more and more, yes, it does. Does the way in which you think impact you? Sure it does. If all of you think right now, if you go home and you talk initially about the two things that really angered you or irritated you, then how is your evening going to go? A lot of times we're frustrated, we're angry. We usually make those in our household angry. And for what? Whereas we went in and talked about the best experiences, how's that change our evening? How's that change our day? It's amazing how many different things happen to us every day. They say billions of sensory input come into you every single day. And you get to choose which bits you focus on, which ones you grab onto. We're kind of trained to grab one of those things that are negative or that are frustrating or that produce anxiety. And so what that does, that creates this anxiety in us. Well, what if we were trained better to grab onto those positive, those hopeful, those good things that happen? Because every single day, both of those things are happening in our lives. So what are some other benefits to happiness? They found that happy people are smarter and more creative. Happy people have more stable and happy marriages. Happy people make more money. Happy people are healthier and live longer. And happy people are generous. So these are some incredible findings they've had. So often people think of positive psychology in this just happy kind of hippie type movement, but it's not. It's rooted in science. Many studies have been done to try and help prove these things, to show this, that these benefits are out there. And so as we work with teens, think about what a joy and what a benefit that would be if we can teach teens some of these skills, some of these abilities, how we can possibly change the trajectory of their life at this stage instead of them having to go through some of the challenges they might have gone through if they didn't have these skills available to them. So what are some myths of this whole happiness thing? The first myth is that happiness must be found. I kind of call this the if-when kind of theory. And I'm sure some of you have done this before. It's if I can get that new job, then I'll be happy. If I can make this income, then I'll be happy. If I get the new car, then I can be happy. If I can just get through this week, this 1 week, if I get through this week, then my life will be happy. And it's almost like we're trying to wait it out and seek it out. And hopefully one day we'll just find this great feeling of happiness. The problem is every time we use that bar, the bar gets moved again. It's funny, I read somewhere that when you get a new job and you get a new paycheck, everybody is so happy that first pay period because you get your first check and you're so excited. By that second pay period, you're underpaid because our minds kind of work that way. We kind of get frustrated easily. We kind of look at what we want next, what's out there. And a lot of times our media, the stuff we see, the advertising, all those things don't help that. Because we're kind of taught this is what looks like happiness. This is what it is. And so we're out there constantly searching for this elusive thing called happiness, not realizing that it's internal the whole time. Another myth is that, if you're positive, if you have all this happy feelings, that bad things don't happen to them or bad things won't happen to you. Well, that's just crazy, obviously. No matter what we do in life, no matter what kind of thinking we have, good and bad things will happen to all of us. The difference is, how are we going to deal with it? One of the things that I think a lot of us do, or at least I do, I don't know about you, by nature, is I'll think of the worst case scenario sometimes. And something will happen, I'll think of all those worst case scenarios about what could happen, and I'll prepare myself, because my thought is if I prepare myself for all the worst case scenarios, then when they happen, I'll be able to handle it a lot easier. Well, the reality is, if something bad happens, you can think about all you want. It's still going to be terrible. It's still going to feel bad. So all your time of preparing for that bad situation, just wasted all that time feeling bad so you could feel bad anyway. So it's almost like we have this need to kind of be stuck in that negative possibility because we don't want to come across as not, being realist, being in the moment, all those things to where people will maybe think we're strange because we're just these Pollyanna happy people. Well, again, happiness, optimism, that doesn't mean that you just forget that there's bad or negative. You just deal with it differently. So again, for our teens, who are kind of brought up in this culture, which is challenging for teens to just sit there and try and think of what is positive in the world. That's hard for them because positive has almost been framed to set you up to experience failure because you can't reach it. Well, if we help them understand that positive and negative things are going to happen to you, so how do you want to have a mindset through it all and help train them on that, then maybe they will just be able to deal with the negative easier because they'll have the resiliency and the skills to do it. And the negative won't hit so hard because their mindset is in a different place. The last myth is you either have it or you don't. This myth is basically like those optimists, those people that are happy around us. They were just born that way and that's just the way they are. And I was born to just be cynical, be realistic, to see things as they are, whatever words you want to use. That's how I was born. So I'm just not like them. So it is what it is. Well, the reality is a lot of things can change even if you weren't born with it. Because can you become happier? Well, according to Sonia Lubomirsky, she kind of was able to find this breakdown of kind of how much happiness can be controlled. So 50% of it, according to the research, is basically just genetic predisposition. That is that stuff that you can't change. 10% is the circumstance in our lives, and then 40% is in our own control. 40% is a lot. If you were 40% happier, what would that look like? That's a lot, makes a big difference. So we can control it. So again, what does this mean for teens? What does this mean for us? It means that we don't necessarily have to go through life always focused on what's wrong with us. We can actually go through life building on those strengths, building on the good we have in ourselves, and helping teens to do that as well so that they can cope with the world that they have to deal with on a daily basis, which is hard. I would not want to be a teenager today. It's challenging. There's a lot of hurdles, a lot of challenges they have to jump across just to deal with things that I didn't have to deal with. So again, the goal is how do we use this new science as a way to help them maybe change the way in which their thoughts work, the way in which their brain processes stuff. So that was a lot of information as a setup. Are there any questions you all may have at this point? That'll give me a chance to take a drink of something.
So far, I'm not seeing any questions come in right now. Oh, we do have one. Do we get a copy of the slides?
I think I can make that happen. So yes, because there's a lot of information on them. I think what would be easier is I have a little PDF file that will have all the activities on them and a couple of information. So I'll probably send that out to Ashley to give to all of you all, if that'd be helpful.
Perfect.
All right, well, again, if you have any questions, that was, again, a brief overview of positive psychology. Just want to kind of give you the very cheap version, I guess, of kind of what's going on. The bigger time, and this is, a lot of times when I lead a presentation, I do it based on what I want. And so you get what I like, which is more hands-on activities. Because I know all of you work with teens, and I know that I always want to walk away from these things with some resources or some things in the toolbox to try and help with what I'm doing in my profession, with my kids, with whoever I'm working with. So we're going to spend the majority of time during this presentation on just a bunch of activities that you can either take or not take. My whole theory is we all have these tools that we learn. Most of you went to some kind of schooling to learn different practices, different styles. Most of you through your experience have learned things that work, things that may not work as well. We also know depending on the kid we work with, some things work and some things don't. So again, my philosophy is let's give you as many tools as possible so you can do what I call experiments. You basically work with an experiment, or yes, like Nancy's saying, if we have adoptive parents on this, you can also use the same stuff there to build your toolkit to work with your kids. But try and give you as many tools as possible so that you can use what works with that kid, because not everything's going to work with every kid, but at least you'll have tools to try, do an experiment for a week, see if it works. If it does, keep that tool. If it doesn't, toss it and try something else. So kind of a process of elimination type thing. So here we go as far as doing some activities, some building blocks. So I'll have you do a lot of these things just to experience it. But again, just realize that this can also be adapted to anybody you work with, as well as your personal life. So the first, and one other thing before we start is a lot of these activities, this is not necessarily like the most difficult thing in the world. It's not rocket science. The problem is we just don't do it. We just don't do it enough to where we practice it and it becomes kind of our nature to do it. You know, often we have these default ways in which we cope with situations. And when that situation happens, we default into that coping skill. You know, for me, I have some negative ones. So when I get stressed, my favorite thing to do is just eat as much awful food as possible. My favorite thing to do is to sit and just stare at the TV screen. Neither of those things are very helpful. Now, if I want to change those things, I have to practice doing something different when I'm not in that stressful situation. If I only practice when I'm in the middle of stress, it's not going to work because I'm going to reverse back to my default ways of handling things. So I have to practice these skills often so that eventually they become my default instead of something else. So let me respond to this question before we get started. So Christy says, I responded to my daughter that was so positive. She told us that we should always have a positive attitude and positive things will come. So I stated to her, if you have a negative day, how are you going to respond if you're not having a positive day? How would you respond to this question? That's a great question, Christy. Thanks for that, because that's a hard one. And I think that's what I was trying to say a little bit earlier is we have to help people understand that positivity doesn't necessarily negate negative situations. What it does is it makes them less impactful. What it does is it makes us more resilient to them. What it does is make us not get as stuck on them so we can move past them. So again, all of us have good and bad things in every day. So if negative things are happening to you in a day, sometimes that's doing some of these skills, taking some deep breaths, working on some things to stop and think about what was positive, or take a moment to actually reflect on that negative so you can deal with it and then move on to what you can do next, not let it ruminate inside you for the whole day. So I think the trick to this whole thing is to help people understand how positive thinking, positive feelings can impact your overall thinking, not necessarily stop the negative day from happening, but limit how effective it challenges you as far as your holistic thinking of that day. So hopefully that helps. All right, so here we go on some happiness challenges. So again, I'm gonna try and lead you through these. These are a little challenging to do this way. I don't know, one of the things about the pandemic that I'm sure many of you experienced is I really didn't even know what Zoom was before the pandemic hit. I didn't know what Teams was or GoToMeeting or all these things that we have now. And now it's kind of like all we do. And so doing all these presentations on these video formats is interesting because I can't see your faces. I can't know what's going on. So it's kind of tricky. So some of these activities will be a little tricky because I'll have you do them and it'll look like kind of like dead air in a way. But the goal is for you just to do your best and kind of see how they feel for you and kind of start making a list of what you think might work for you, the people you work with, and what things maybe you'll put to the side and maybe not do as much. So the first one is the foundation block to most things, which is breathing. And all of us know this. All of us know that breathing is highly important, but all of us don't do much to enhance our breathing, especially when we start to get stressed, overwhelmed, or frustrated. As you know from your physiology, when you get to those states, your body starts to tighten up and your breathing becomes quick and shallow. And that prevents oxygen from getting to the brain, which makes our brain almost go into the survival mode of trying to compensate for that. And so we end up making ourselves more stressed, more anxious, more frustrated, which is not helpful. So we're gonna do a couple of things with this one. So it's very simple thing you can teach the people you work with or do in your own life. And it's just basically helping them get a rhythm and accounting to their breathing. So we're gonna do this at first, and I'll add something into it that you can do as a supplemental activity here in just a second. What I want you to do is get as comfortable as you possibly can, wherever you are. And if you're comfortable, I want you to close your eyes if you're okay with that. And I want you to just start focusing on your breathing. I want you to just notice the air that's coming in, what that sensation is like. And then feel the air as you let it go, as you exhale. And just take a moment to really feel that air moving in and out of your body. If something else comes in your mind, let it just kind of flow on by and then get back to focusing on your breathing. Now, as you're focused on your breathing, we're going to breathe in to a count of 4, and then we're going to breathe out to a count of 4. So I'll start you by helping count, and then I'll leave you to do it on your own. So here we go. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 3, 2, 1. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 3, 2, 1. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 3, 2, 1. Now continue breathing, counting your head up to 4, and then letting it out down to 1. And focus on that breath as it enters your body. And then let it go as it exits your body. All right, now breathe a couple more times. And then when you're ready, you can kind of open your eyes and come back to this present moment.
Staff under you runners.
All right, so in the chat, if you want to kind of put how that felt for you, kind of what experience you had, that'd be great. Again, for a lot of people, what this does is it just gets our body in more of a regulated state. It just makes you feel kind of like you're relaxed, you're calm. So many of the teens that you work with, they're coming into your office often already on edge, already at this heightened kind of, place. And so, that peaceful feeling, that calm feeling, think about what a gift that is to them to teach them how to do this, how to self-regulate through the breathing. It's one of the most basic activities we can do when kids come to our offices is just help them stop for a second before we even start and just breathe. Just get that breathing in. Hopefully you're not too sleepy and you don't fall asleep, but I can understand the breathing exercise causing you to be a little drowsy. So another thing you can kind of do with this, an expansion of it, as you get people kind of relaxed, is I call it a mindcation. And so what I want you to do is I want everybody to think of either a real vacation that you've taken that was the best vacation you ever had, or a vacation you've always wanted to take that you would just be able to imagine would be such a great vacation. All right, so think of that vacation. Once you have that vacation, I want you to just think in your mind kind of what you experienced, what kinds of sights you saw, what you were doing, and just kind of pick a moment in that vacation that kind of just where you felt really good, where you're kind of at this great peace, this joy, this happiness, whichever way you want to do it. Just pick one of those emotions where you really felt that on this vacation. All right, what I want you to do is I want you to go back, close your eyes one more time, and I want you to go back to your breathing. Again, we don't have to breathe as long, but just kind of start focusing on that breathing again. Just breathe in and breathe out. Get that relaxed feeling for a second. Now what I want you to do is I want you to picture that place. Picture that vacation spot. I want you to look around. I want you to see everything around you. See if you can smell what it smells like there. Hear the sounds of what's happening around you. And just feel that contentment, that joy as you're just standing in that place, in that moment. And just be as present as you can in that place, hearing the sounds around you, seeing the sights, feeling maybe the temperature, if it's a warm place, the warmth, if it's cooler, the cool. Smelling the good smells, and just experience that deep joy that you have while you're there. And as you're at this place, take a moment just to be thankful for the opportunity to be there and the experience you're having. And then when you're ready, take a few breaths and come back to us. All right, again, you can put how that was for you. It's a little different when you do it for real. If you choose to, you'll obviously take a little more time doing it with a team or doing it on your own, either way. Yeah, I know, stay on the beach, stay where you are. That's why I do that activity first, so that you actually have to come back quickly, so you don't just leave the rest of the time. You would do that longer with someone else or with yourself, and that you'd actually really go through all the sensations. You'd obviously get them to tell you about that place, get them to explain it to you, talk it through, say what about it made you happy, and then take note of all those words they're using, and then set them up to be kind of use those in their imagery. And so again, the whole idea of that is we talk all the time about not being able to go away, not being able to do anything. Well, this kind of little trip is just a quick mind trip, and it just gets you in a different frame of mind than maybe what you were in 10 minutes ago. And that's the whole idea, changing that mindset, try and get them different. So the two things there, the biggest thing to learn is about the breathing. Again, to me, that's kind of the foundational thing. The more you can help people learn how to breathe, the more that'll reduce that anxiety, that feeling they have, and the struggle they're having. And then just a secondary activity that you can use if you want to, is to take them to a place that brought them that joy, so they can have that sense of kind of warmth, that sense of good feeling inside themselves, regardless of what they're going through in the current moment. All right, so that's kind of the breathing. The next, many of you have seen this one before. It's the miracle question. Just kind of changing it up a little bit. Those solution folks, counselors, will like this one because that's kind of right in their bread and butter. But basically, it's when you're working with a team or when you're working with anybody, you just ask the simple question. If you woke up tomorrow and a miracle happened and you were completely happy, how would you know? So think about that and put those in the chat. How would you know if you woke up and you were completely happy? What would that look like? No complaints in your head. That's a good one. Better quality of sleep. Yeah. No weight in the chest. That's good. Pause about the future. A choice you make. That's good. Don't have anything to worry about. Wouldn't be troubled. You'd be peaceful. My kids wouldn't be screaming at each other. That's a good one. Good luck. So peace, unburdened, no stress, all is right with the world. So what's interesting about this, and you can help people, is a lot of you used great words, but they're hard to define sometimes. So when we say peace, peace is a good word, but help your clients, help yourself define what that looks like. So how would you tangibly know what peace is for you? How would you know what not worrying looks like for you. And you can define some of those even more concretely. Then what that does for us and what it does for teens is it helps us to actually reach that. One of the biggest issues, and some of you may work with couples. When I work with couples, one of the challenging parts of working with couples is a lot of times when they're having challenges, it's not that they don't love each other. It's that they don't know how to love each other in the way the other person understands. And so often they'll say, I love you, or I'm trying to love you. And it's just not hitting right because they haven't defined what love is for them, because all of us have a different definition of what love is. So when you think about this miracle question, part of it is helping the teen to express kind of what would it look like? What does happiness look like? Because if they can define happiness in tangible ways, like family is a great tangible way to define happiness. Friends, playing basketball, going to the movies, eating pizza. Those are all tangible things of happiness that help us know that we can actually reach it or attain it based on that. So again, it's a simple exercise, and the whole goal of it is just to start the conversation with the teen about how they would define happiness, and then how you go about getting it in their life and how they about experiencing it for themselves. So that one's called the miracle question. Again, the idea is to help define kind of what's going on. The next one is a big kind of movement in a lot of areas. And I'm sure some of your groups or agencies and places are doing this more. It's that strengths-based approach. So again, especially with teens and young people, we're trying more and more not to just sit there and focus on their pathology, their symptomology, but we're trying to figure out what strengths do they possess and how do we build on those strengths. Developing those kind of person-centered plans that kind of help them focus on what to do next. So the way in which you do this activity, which I'd like you to do right now, just take a little, if you have a little sheet of paper, something beside you, anything you can write on, I want you to just write out 3 or 4 strengths that you possess. So they can be different types of traits. They can be things that you think are just strong qualities. Anything that you would consider a strength. All right, if you've got a couple of those strengths down, what I want you to do now is I want you to write next to each of those strengths an example from your life that has showed that strength. So for example, if your strength is listening, well, I did a great job of listening to my kids last night when they were stressed about their jobs. So it's an example of when that strength has been used or how you've seen that strength in action. All right, so what is, you can put it in the chat, what do y'all think is the point of doing the listing of strengths and then adding on the example? Okay, focus on the positive. That's true. The evidence, that's very good. Tangible examples, yes. The reinforcement, yes. So it validates, yes, validates, very good. So that's exactly right. So basically what you're doing is, first of all, you may have to help teenagers actually figure out what their strengths are. Because a lot of times teenagers, they may come into you with that kind of soul and disposition where you say, I want you to list 3 of your strengths, and they'll be like, I don't have any. Nothing's good. So what we do then is we can do it, reverse it. So we think, all right, what are some examples of when you felt like you did something well? As they say, example, you help them figure out what strengths are based in doing that well. Because everybody's done something well. And so help them list that. And then yes, once they get those words, it does a couple of things. The words help build kind of this self-esteem and help them realize that they are valued. that they are good, that they do have worth. Because that's one of the hardest things for teens is sometimes they feel like they're not worthwhile. They're not valued people, and they all are. They're all incredible creations. And so helping them see those words can help them realize that value. And then showing the example helps them validate that, helps them see that's a true thing inside of them. So again, the more that we can talk about strengths, and if you do this activity, you can even use that in sessions after that to keep bringing those strengths up when they're dealing with situations. Like, how are you using your kindness in the midst of the situation? Because that's a strength of yours. So what are we doing to do that? So you can help build them up that way and help them see how their strengths help them navigate through whatever challenges they may be facing. But again, strengths-based approach is great. The more we help kids realize how valuable, how many strengths they have, I think the more likely they'll stay in that kind of positive disposition about who they are, and their self-esteem will likely increase because they'll see that they have this value. All right, next, social support. Social support is a huge thing for this feeling of happiness, this feeling of positivity in our lives. I think this is one of the hardest things about the past year and a half was the fact that we couldn't really go have dinners with people. We couldn't be social. We were kind of stuck in a reclusive type environment. And just think of all those either teenagers who kind of retreated to their own spaces or all those people who lived alone. There were a ton of people who just didn't have that social support, and that I think caused a lot of challenges psychologically for so many people because social support is important. We need that. It feeds us, it's connecting, it connects us not only to each other, but to kind of this bigger kind of sense of community that I think we all need. So there's an activity you can do for social support with teens or yourself, whoever, is what I want you to do to practice it is I want you to take out your cell phone. On your cell phone, I'd like for you to look through your contacts. And I want you to find a contact of somebody that you haven't talked to in a while, but that's an important person in your life. And you can do one of two things. You can either just think about that person and kind of just remembering why they're in your life. But even better step, if teens are comfortable or if you're comfortable, is send them a text just saying, thinking about you, hope things are well, or something along those lines. The idea of this is to foster that connection. So many of us, we have made connections through our lives. We have a lot of people in our lives that support and care for us, but we also get busy with the day-to-day of life. And so a lot of people that are important, sometimes we just don't connect with as much because life just happens. So this activity helps recreate that connection. And especially for a teen who may be feeling like they don't have connections, this kind of might help them build on the connections that they may have. You know, even have them say, hey, just thinking about that time we played basketball. Nothing more, don't make it awkward for them, but just something simple, just kind of help connect that and help them kind of connect with someone. You can also do this if they don't have that person or if that's too uncomfortable, you can have them do this with somebody that they're comfortable with. So it could be their best friend in the world, but just a message that connects them, because while they're doing that message, typically our brain goes to focus on the joy of that person, the relationship, who they are, and we start thinking about that person and changing kind of our mindset as we remember that connection we have. So pretty basic there. All right, any questions on that one? Any thoughts on that one? Again, I'm telling you, a lot of these things, it's not rocket science. It's more about just trying to rethink some activities. And the good thing about these activities is that they're very easy for teenagers to comprehend and to do, easy to adapt in our lives. And I think those are the best activities we can have because we want teens to go away with these tools and actually use them, not with all this maybe great educational speak that we can use, or some of these more theory-based activities that are maybe hard for them to understand. So, all right, the next one is gratitude. So Sean Aker wrote a book. He's written quite a few of them. He's one of the key people in positive psychology. One of the best TED Talks, Sean Aker. So look up Sean Aker TED Talk. It's a great one to watch. He's very humorous, does a great job of making all this very easy to understand. And one of the areas he talks about is his gratitude in his book, Happiness Advantage. And he kind of lists an activity. And there's been a lot of research just on how much gratitude actually affects us and how much it changes our mindset and changes our focus. So we're going to practice again. What I want you to do, very simple, on this piece of paper that you have, if you have one, or you can do it in your phone, I want you to jot down 3 things specifically that you're grateful for from today. You can even put some of those things in the chat if you want. So anything you're grateful for from today. Beautiful weather, that's a good one. Good, thank you for the link, Nancy. Healthy family, a fulfilling career, waking up, transportation, life, stable housing, successful state audit. I know how that one is, so way to go on that one. That's awesome. Ability to do Zoom. I know, isn't it amazing how we couldn't even do half the jobs we have 10 years ago that we can do now because of this. So being able to work from home, family, daughter's good day at camp, friends, those are all great ones. So again, just notice as you're, well, that's awesome. Get to hear your baby's heartbeats. That's fantastic. So congratulations on that. Full tank of gas. That is always a good one, especially with gas prices going up. It's nice not have to fill up for a while. So again, we have all these positive things that we think back on and we show gratitude for. What it does, just feel it in yourself and think about where's your mind right now after listing those few things. You didn't list anything amazing as far as earth shattering, but they were all good things. And so our brain changes. Our brain goes to those. All of a sudden, we're not necessarily focused on those 5 things that have annoyed us today, which tends to be more of our go-to for a lot of people. So again, we write down 3 things and our perspective changes. So here's the trick with this one. What they say is that you can create what's called a gratitude journal. You can call it whatever you want to call it. You can have the youth call it whatever they want to call it. For the next 30 days, or if you need to pare it down to just a week for kids, so they kind of keep up with it, write down 2 to 3 positive things from the day at the end of each day. And keep it in a journal, keep it in a book all together. And every day, 2 to 3 things. Now, here's the only trick to this one. You can't repeat. So once you put an item down, the next day you have to use different items. Now, why would we do that? Well, the reason we're doing that is because it forces us to constantly look around and see what was good. And we're training our brain to notice those good things. And they've done studies to find that people who do these gratitude journals have a higher level of happiness and contentment at 1 month, 3 months, and 6-month follow-ups. So it makes an impact because we're focused on that positive thinking. Because if I have to go back at the end of every day and I'm ending my day trying to come up with the positive things that happened, well, I'm ending my day thinking about what was good instead of the stress or the anxiety that I may have done otherwise. It also helps me to keep it in a journal because then I can look back over the course of the week and now I can see 14 to 21 positive things that I'm grateful for over the past week. That's a pretty impressive list. And as you read over those things again, it's going to bring that joy right back. And it's going to put us right back in that mindset. So again, the good thing when doing this with teens is you can make it as short or as long as you want based on the team. So again, you can start off saying, hey, if you meet with them, if you're in a school system and you can see them like 2 or 3 days later, just have them do it for 2 or 3 days and just ask them how it went. If you see them once a week, ask them for the week, see how it went. So again, just check it out. Yeah, Stephanie, I love that idea. That's great. So looking at other people's gratitude is all helpful. I know just reading your list when y'all put things on that chat made me feel good, just hearing all the good things. So kind of good builds on good. So that's kind of the gratitude journal. Now, there's a way in which you can take gratitude to another level. And it's kind of like what, I forget who said, somebody said in the chat, it's always good to get a good text from somebody. It's kind of along those lines. But this is called a gratitude letter. And you can do this with teens, you can do it yourself. It's basically, think of somebody, one person in your life that you're grateful for. Now, there's probably plenty, there's many of them, but just think of one that you're grateful for in your life. And I want you to write down that name. Now, what you do, or what the team would do, is they would write a letter to that person, just telling them why they're grateful for them. So as you think about that person you wrote down, I want you to just think about it. You don't have to write it for now, but just think about, why are you grateful for that person? What about them makes you feel good? Or have they done that has made you better for who you are? Now, again, if you're doing this activity, I encourage you to write it down. There is something transient that happens when we write stuff down. It kind of is almost like leaving our internal to an external. It becomes kind of a different expression. And so it hits harder when it's actually written down. That's why just thinking about stuff is great, but thinking about it and writing it down is even better. Thinking about it, writing it down and reading it is even better. Thinking about it, writing it down, reading it and saying it is best. So the next step of this activity is, once you write the letter, you can give your youth, if you're working with a team, the choice, or you can do it as far as if you feel comfortable. If they can go to that person and they can read the letter to them, that has been shown to have the biggest impact, not only on the person you're reading it to, but also on yourself, as far as a powerful experience of connection with that person, but also as far as a feeling of deep sense of gratitude and joy inside of us. So if you want to see more about this activity, there's a great YouTube clip that kind of does it. It's by Soul Pancake. It's called Experiment in Gratitude. So look up Soul Pancake, Experiment in Gratitude. And that's a great YouTube video that kind of shows you people that have done this and kind of the impact it's had on them. So again, a great activity for teens, especially as they're kind of learning what it means to be grateful for people in our lives and the impact that can have on them moving forward. All right, again, I said some of these are basic. Here's a real basic one. Smiling. So smiling has a powerful effect on us. It's hard to stay miserable and smile at the same time. There's a couple of activities that you can do with the smile. One thing that's been an interesting activity for some people is, you can try this tomorrow. When you wake up in the morning, I'm sure we have a lot of morning people here that just love mornings, but when you wake up in the morning, smile as big as you can until you get in the car to leave for work, and see if that changes your morning getting ready experience. See if that changes the way you feel as you drive to work. Maybe it will, we'll see. But again, smiling changes us. It makes us come in a different perspective. It's hard to be miserable and smile. You know, they even found that smiling has health benefits to it, which is crazy. This is one of the craziest studies that I've seen, just as far as just interesting to me. So they did a study, this was in 2009, and what this group did was they looked at baseball cards from 1952. So they took 230 baseball cards, their pictures of the players from 1952, and they analyzed the smile of the guys on the baseball card. Okay, so again, picture that, all these baseball cards, and they're looking at the person on the card and just judging their smile. And they graded them in 3 categories. They had the no smile category, they had a partial smile, and they had what's called a Duquesne smile, which is a fancy word for kind of authentic. So it's kind of that big, broad smile, like you can just tell the person's joyful. It's not the fake camera half smile, partial smile. All right, so there's 3 categories: no smile, partial smile, Duquesne smile, and they put all these 230 players in one of the 3 categories. Then what they did, which was kind of interesting, is they looked at lifespan of these players, and they found some unique data. They found that on average, the players that did not smile on their baseball card lived to be 72.9 years old. They found that the people that did partial smiles on their baseball card lived to be 75 years old on average. And the ones who did the Duquesne authentic smile lived to be 79.9 years old, a difference of 7 years longer than people with no smile on their baseball card. And to me, that's fascinating. Now, I don't know if that's strictly because of the smile, probably not on the card, but what they're saying is kind of like the Nun Study, basically saying that people that have more joy have a tendency to possibly live longer and be healthier. So again, the more we smile, the more we may build up that health reserve, that longevity, just that positive kind of feeling moving forward. So again, you can do the wake up and smile activity. You can also, if you're working with teens, I know that you don't experience this, but I know with my teens, sometimes what they consider a major life drama in my adult mind is not a big deal, but I can't say that to them, obviously, because I don't want to minimize their experience. But if you can have them kind of try an activity where they tell you about the activity, you kind of, or the event, you just talk about it in a real way, and then you have them retell that event, smiling as big as possible the whole time they're telling the event, and just have them talk about how it felt differently the second time. Because sometimes when we smile, we can't be in that place. I know I have a daughter. My daughter is 16. I have found out that teenage girls, at least my teenage girl, has a great propensity for drama and always looking at what's kind of wild and awful. And so I've had her do this. She can't tell me any drama story unless she's smiling. It's been interesting just to see how she's responded to that. Most times she just looks at me and says, "Oh, Dad," and gets annoyed with me, but that's normal. But a lot of times it's not near the intensity that it was before she started doing this. And it helps her kind of cope with it and maybe move beyond it quicker. So again, that's my huge research study with a study pool, participant pool of 1. So again, you give that a shot. Smiling can have an impact, can help out. All right, this next one's one of my favorite ones that I do. And I don't know if some of you have seen this or not. It's called the control square. So a lot of times our anxiety and our stress, even our depression, comes from a lack of control. What we end up doing is we focus on things we can't control, and that just causes us to spin out of control. So this activity is not too difficult. I'm going to walk you through it. So again, what I want you to do, if you're willing, is get out that little piece of paper or get out something to write on, whatever you want. And what you're going to do is I'm going to give you about a minute, maybe 30 seconds to a minute. When you do this for real, you might put 2 minutes on a clock for a team to do it. But what I want you to do in this 30 seconds to a minute is on this piece of paper, I want you to list everything that right now is frustrating you, stressing you out, annoying you, angering you, or making you sad. So stressed, anger, frustrated, sad, annoyed. Okay, so 30 a minute, don't think much about it. Just quickly jot down words that will mean something to you and just write down as many things you can think of in 30 seconds to a minute in your whole life that fits any of those categories. All right, start listing. All right, so now you have your list. Again, you'll do this a little bit longer if you do it with a team, but just make sure that you have that time on the clock. You can kind of negotiate however you want. I don't like to spend more than 2 minutes because I don't want to get stuck in this space of just constantly listing horrible things or things that are bad for us. It's more just to get those, because usually the first 30 seconds is the stuff that's right at the forefront that's causing us that most stress or anxiety or sadness or whatever it may be. So I kind of stop it after 2 minutes just so we can kind of move on to the next part of the activity and kind of help them move through whatever they're struggling with. So again, you have your list. And what you're going to do is you're going to look at your list and you're going to ask yourself just 2 questions about each item on your list. The first question is this important? So again, this is totally in your world. As you think about that item, is it important? So I'll give you one of mine. One of mine, this morning, my son would not wake up for work. So that's one of my stresses and irritations. So as I look at that in the grand scheme of things, that's not really important. So for me, that'd be not important. My wife got frustrated. To me, that's important. So again, you live however you want based on all the things you list. First question, is it important or not? Second question is, can you or can't you control it? Right? And what you'll do is you'll make a box, you'll make a control square. It looks like this. And you'll start putting items into the box that they fit. So important, can control. Important, can't control. Not important, can control. Not important, can't control. So take all your items and try and put them in the boxes where they fit. Now, as you're looking at these items, you also want to notice that sometimes when it comes to control, there's parts of it we can control and parts we can't. So when I brought my example of my wife, she's very important, but obviously I can't control her. But what I can control is my reaction to my wife. So I might put reaction to wife in important, can control. So again, some of these may be in multiple categories. So you just get to pick which one you feel like you have control over of it and what parts you don't, and just put it in the right spot. All right, once you get all those things in the right boxes, what I want you to do is I want you to put X's through the box important, can't control, not important, can control, and not important, can't control. So all 3 of those boxes should have X's in it, and you just circle the items in important, can control. Why is this? Because 1, those are the items that are important, and 2, those are the only things you can control. So if it's not important, don't let it matter to you. If you can't control it, you can't do anything about it anyway. So you circle the items in important, can control, and then you think of one thing that you can do in the next 24 hours for each of those items in important, can control. So for example, my wife was highly annoyed probably with me this morning. So in that box, important, can control, I'm putting my reaction to my wife. So in the next 24 hours, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go get her favorite Starbucks drink. Now, will that solve the issue? Will she not be annoyed with me? No, but it's a step in the direction, and I can do that. I have control over that. I can go and help that process. Because here's what happens again. Our brains get stuck on what we can't control or what's not important, and that's just this white noise that's just in our head that affects our anxiety, affects our stress, affects our depression, affects all those things. But when we're focused on doing something, we're actively involved in helping things that are bothering us, then it limits and it reduces that on us because now we're in control. So it still may be difficult, but at least I'm in control of part of the process. Now with this control square, I may do one now, and then I may start feeling out of control in a couple hours. I may do another one. Or I may start doing them once a day just to get practice so I can start focusing only on what I can control. You know, teenagers are notorious about this. They focus on all those aspects of life they can't control. You know, teachers, what they're doing, what they can't be involved in as far as activities, the fact they're not an adult, the fact that other kids are talking about them. They're all things they can't control. And they get so spun out by that. And again, that's what causes a lot of the stress and anxiety. All right, any questions about the control square you might have? It's a little bit more complex, but again, a great way to kind of help a youth focus on what they can do about the important things. Questions or comments on that one? Again, I'll tell you, with all these things I'm talking about, even some of them may sound simple. You got to practice them, or teens have to practice them whenever they're in a calm mode, or they'll never use them when they're stressed or in a bad place. So again, that's why you come into play as far as working with teens. You can practice these in office, take one, practice it every time for a month or so, get them that tool, and then start another one. So again, that's called the control square. Next one is savor positivity. So some of you may have read this book, another good one. It's by Rick Hansen, called Hardwiring Happiness. Rick had a pretty impressive study in which he found that spending extra time on positive things, as far as thinking about them, will actually rewire the brain, which is fascinating. You know, what they found is that we're actually predisposed with a negativity bias, predisposed kind of negativity, more survival instinct, because we had to. You know, if you think about it, 2,000 years ago, humans, when they walked outside, they could be eaten. I mean, that was a real possibility that thousands of years ago, we actually might be eaten when we're outside. You know, hundreds of years ago, if you were bit by something, or you were, you ran into something, as far as like a plant that was poisonous, or any of those things happened, again, you could die. If you got sick 100 years ago, there's certain types of sicknesses that you could not recover from. And so think about living in those types of worlds when going outside was really life or death. So our brains had to be focused on every possible negativity, every possible thing that would go wrong. So evolutionary wise, we're trained to think that way. The problem is, in today's world, we don't need that as much. Sure, there's still some things that are dangerous out there, but for the most part, we're not going to be eaten when we go outside. If we get sick, we'll get help for it. There's just not those things to worry about. But our brain is predisposed to worry, to stress about that. So we have to hardwire it differently. And that's what Hansen kind of talked about, is how do we do that? And so what he found through his experiments is that you spend a little bit of extra time just thinking of those positive things that happen. So what I want you to do for this one, pretty simple, is I want you to think of one or two positive things that have happened to you today. All right, now with either of those things, I want you to think about it again, think about what exactly happened, and I want you to spend just an extra 10 to 15 seconds really rethinking that, really focused on that whole situation, how it made you feel, and how it was a positive thing for you. Now that was 10 seconds. That's not a big deal, but apparently 10 seconds makes a huge impact. What our brains, many of us have done, and I am very guilty of this, is 10 things happen to me in a day. If 3 of them are positive, I'm quickly moving beyond those because it was nice, but it's over. But the 3 that were negative, I'm spending all evening, all afternoon, the next week thinking about those things. And so what am I training my brain to only focus on? All the negativity, all that kind of stuff. So what you're doing is you're saying, anytime you have a positive experience, you may have to start off by thinking back and doing 10 seconds of rethinking about it. But what we're training ourselves to do is when the positive experience happens, if we can spend at least 10 seconds, hopefully more, time just relishing, living in that moment, being mindful of being present while that moment is happening, and just enjoying everything about it, then our brain synapses start to change a little bit and help us gear more towards having that kind of mindset instead of the survival negative mindset. So pretty amazing. It's a pretty simple thing. You just help teens to think of those situations that have happened, have them spend an extra 10 seconds focused on it as you train them to do that just as a normal daily exercise for them in life, and just see what the impact, see what the difference is. Next was called The Power of Moments. Chip and Dan Heath their books are really good. And they kind of think about things in a different way and they present it really well. They wrote a book called Moments. Really good book. I would encourage you to read it. And they just talked about powerful moments and how moments are kind of at the essence of what we remember as far as our experiences, the good ones in life. So those powerful big moments. And it's more about creativity and kind of how to create those moments. So for example, one of the examples they brought up in their book was there's a hotel in California. Don't know if you know this hotel, but when you go to the hotel out by the pool, they have a popsicle hotline phone. And so you can go to that phone and pick up anytime and somebody will immediately deliver a popsicle to you. Well, this has made them pretty famous because kids and even adults want to go there because of that one phone, because that's a moment, because you went to the hotel with that experience. Because they have somebody dressed up with white gloves and everything, and just brings you a popsicle. What a very creative way, not very expensive, just a creative way to create a moment. So how do we create those for teens? You know, I know at our clinic here at MHMR, one thing we're really trying to figure out is how do we make, when somebody graduates from therapy, how do we make that a moment? How do we make that something really unique and something special so that when they leave that experience, that's something that sticks with them in life. Not just a great job, you're done, you don't have to come back, but more something that's very symbolic. So, you know, thinking of we've created a wall where they get to write a positive word on it. And then we have their favorite snack for them. And we have all the other therapists come in and congratulate them. And then they leave writing that word on our wall so everybody can see that list of words, their power words for the people who have graduated therapy. So again, they don't put their names because of HIPAA, all that good stuff, but they put that word, and just the whole experience makes them leave here hopefully having that moment, which again creates that deeper sense of fulfillment. So in your agency, in your school, whatever, your home with your adopted kids, whatever you're working with, think about how can you make these incredible moments that again don't have to be expensive, don't have to be time consuming, but just something unique that adds something to that so that kids walk away with all these moments in life that are powerful, that help build that self, help build that inner happiness that they're trying to grow within them. All right, the happy box. So a few more of these that we'll go through. Happy box is another not too difficult one. What you're gonna do with this one and what I want you to do real quick is just start making a list of 5 to 10 things that you can do in a couple of minutes that bring you happiness. So for example, on my list, I have certain types of songs. I have certain funny YouTube videos. I have going outside. So whatever you can think of that you can do in like 15 minutes or less, you can put on this list as quick as you can. Things that make you happy. All right, so you kind of got your list. Again, a teen would do the same thing. They'd make their list. And again, the good thing about this is you can keep growing the list. If you can make these on paper to where you can rip them up and kind of have them in separate little slips. What I like to do is I like to put all these slips in a hat or in a bag, keep them somewhere so I can use them whenever needed for myself. Or I have the teen kind of do the same thing. You can actually put them in a box if you want to, but all these slips of paper go in the box, go in the hat. Yes, so again, it's things that make you happy that take 15 minutes or less to do. So again, it's not looking for, we know like big trips and vacations and time off would make us happy, but those are harder to do kind of every day. So it could be reading, it could be watching a TV show, it could be exercising, it could be any of that, gardening, all those things that you can do in around 15 minutes or around 30 at the most, somewhere in that range. Could be up to 1 minute if needed. You put them all in the box. And then what you do is when a teen is, there's 2 ways you can do this exercise. If a teen is feeling stressed or you're feeling stressed, upset, or frustrated, you draw something from the box and you have to do that at that moment. So the reason for this is when I draw something on a happy box and I make myself do it, my brain can't stay on that negative experience as long because now I'm switching to something else. The rules to this, though, are they have to do whatever they draw. That's why you have to make it activities that are doable in that like 10 to 15 minute range. If for some reason you're in a location you can't do it, then you can always draw again. But the idea is to kind of help yourself do that activity. Now, the way I use this most, that's one simple way to use it. But the way I do this most is with teens. So we create the box when they're in a good space, writing down the things, and they have it somewhere where we can utilize it in future times. If they come in with something that's hard or something difficult they're dealing with, what we'll do is we'll set a clock and we'll allow them to deal with that for 10 minutes. We may not deal with all of it, and that's okay. We may come back to it later, but we'll deal with as much of it in 10 minutes as we can. Let them kind of process, just talk through it, just unload, just be totally focused on it. And then I'll make them draw something out of the box and do it. What I'm trying to teach them, and I tell them this, is that when they go home, if they start to get in a funk or start to get in a bad place or start to think about this, that's okay. Again, it's okay to have negative experience, okay to go there, but just don't get stuck there. So I teach them when they go home, set a clock, set your phone for 5 minutes. Be in that moment as much as you want in 5 minutes, feeling it all, feeling the bad that it was. But in 5 minutes, you have to draw something from the box and do it. So again, it gives them permission to realize things are not good and they can deal with it. But then it also allows them to move beyond it to something that's not getting them stuck in that mindset. So again, that one's called the happy box. Next one, cell phone pics. Again, this is another easy activity. What I want you to do right now is take your cell phone and I want you to just look around you and I want you to take a cell phone pic of something that is either beautiful or makes you happy or feels good that you're around right now. So you take the pic, then you look at the picture and you spend 30 seconds to a minute just focused on that picture, thinking of all the good or all the things you like about it. With this one, you can even develop kind of a picture gallery of those pictures that bring you joy. A lot of times with teens, we might go outside and walk around and look for things. They're kind of cool or different or make us kind of have that happiness feeling. We just take the pictures and then we kind of go in and we just take some time just to look at them and think about what makes them good for us. So again, simple activity, but again, what you're doing is you're building up almost an archive in your phone of things that make you happy. You can even take a picture of a person, but it's just something that makes you happy. I took pictures of my dogs because again, just looking at my dogs makes me smile. Again, a chance just to give them a resource to utilize when they're trying to feel grateful or trying to feel different than what they are in their current space. Last one is random acts of kindness. Often we get stuck inside of ourselves. We get stuck in our own heads. And so this helps us get out of it. And they found that when you do acts of kindness, it actually changes the way you feel completely. Sonia Lumiski again did something with this. She was teaching a college class and she had half of her students have to do 5 acts of kindness each week for 6 weeks. So 5 random acts each week for 6 weeks. And then she had the second group just do whatever they wanted to do. Well, she found a twice as high level of happiness and contentment among the group that had to do the acts of kindness as opposed to the other group. That's a huge impact. It made all sorts of differences. They said that when they were helping others, they just felt good about doing something valuable. When they were helping others, they weren't able to think about their own stuff. When they're helping others, it put their items in perspective. When they're helping others, it made them realize how much joy there is in the world. All these things were said because it makes an impact. When we help others, when we reach beyond ourselves, we get out of our own baggage and our own mess in our heads, and we actually start to feel something different. Because again, we have this innate need for community and to belong to something. And so you can have teens try that experiment, try doing something for someone else, and just see what happens as far as how they feel. So the biggest thing is when you're helping teens, that's a lot of activities I gave you. It's not about using them all. It's about finding kind of the 1 or 2 for a teen they can use, and then just helping them one step at a time. We're not looking to change them or make them perfect in day 1. It's about tools. So how can you give them a tool and have them work on it for a week, kind of do what they can, and then build that toolbox. Keep giving them more because every tool we give them helps increase their likelihood for happiness, for success, for resiliency, and kind of navigating this journey that they struggle with just to be a teen. So again, a lot of stuff you can use. Not much of it is rocket science, but again, it's quality science. It's all been proven to have effect, and it's stuff that teens can do to make a difference. So as you work with teens, I appreciate what you do. Again, I'm a big believer that if we can affect the younger generation and help them come up with functional habits and functional coping skills, that our future and their future will be so much better because they'll see the world in a different place. They'll see the world in a way that helps them be successful, joyful, and to make an impact on others, which will keep that kind of cycle going, kind of like the domino effect. So again, I appreciate each of you. I appreciate all the work that you do. I appreciate the fact that you are here because you care, and you're here because you want to help teens in the best way possible. So that's kind of what I got for you today. Hopefully I didn't overwhelm you or bore you too much. But what other questions do you have, if any, as we kind of wrap up at our time?
We have a lot of thank yous coming in, and if you have any questions, just put them in the chat really quickly before we wrap up.
Yeah, so what I'll send Ashley is I will send, Ashley, can you send out a PDF for everybody?
Yes, I think we can, Nancy. Kind of bad.
Yes, we can, and we're also going to send out the recording of this where you went over it, Todd. So I think those will be very helpful tools.
So you'll have the recording you can look at again if you want to, although you have to hear my voice again, which I'm sorry about that. But I'll also send the PDF to Nancy and Ashley, and you'll get that. And inside there, it'll have a couple of the things we talked about, but also have 31 of the tools that you can utilize. And it includes all these plus a few extra with kind of descriptions on how to do them. All right, well, again, I really appreciate all of you. And I appreciate the work you do every day, or even if you're a parent, that's very more than valuable as well as you're navigating your own kids, which is challenging. So I appreciate all of you, and I appreciate you letting me take the time to chat with you today, and look forward to our next time together.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Todd. That was amazing. And we have lots of thank yous and lots of people telling us how wonderful you are. So thank you so much for the past hour and a half. I'm going to have just a few closing items. If you would like more information about Gladney, please reach out. We would love to set up a lunch and learn to teach you more about Gladney's services and resources, or just answer any questions that you may have. We do have a lot of amazing upcoming trainings, so be sure to check those out on our website. And again, when we close this presentation, and evaluation will pop up, so be sure to fill those out for your CEUs, or check your email tomorrow where you can fill out that same information. Thank you, everybody. We are so excited that you attended Gladney University today, and we will see you back in the future.